One is signed on. Well, welcome to today, March 31st. As we wrap up this month, we are excited to bring our participants today who are able to Zoom and join in today, the second part of a 6-part series entitled SPF for Strength, Promote, and Flourish with our IIDA Southern California chapter. I'm your host, Denise Kimani, and I know it's pretty early still as attendees are joining us. Wait for them. Can everybody hear me all right? Can you see me? Great. Thank you for Elliot Smith setting up all the technological features for this day's session, as well as our president, Katie Toth, in the San Diego location. Couldn't have done this without their help today. It looks like a couple more people are joining us, and so a handful of people were able to listen to David last week. He talked about the power of mindfulness, our part 1 series, how to be kind, how to take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, and in your careers. And so it was just a wealth of knowledge that David shared with us last week. And this week, I am delighted to present our keynote speaker, Margo Jones. She has been an advocate in the IIDA of her local chapter in Savannah, Georgia. And before I introduce her further, I would like to thank our sponsors for collaborating with us on today's event. So we have a plethora of astute design partners, as well as friends, donors, patrons, different levels with the different donations of funds. And again, we just thank all of these astute companies nationally and also locally, the local branches that are supporting us. Today's event is brought to you by Crossville. They are, I think, almost everybody's go-to source for your hard surface and tile design. They have great pricing. They also have readily available stock and short lead times. So when you're in a pinch, you can use them as your tile and hard surface design for anywhere that's needed for all the different spaces. Also co-hosting today is Pivot Interiors. Pivot Interiors is the workspace gurus. They can empower and inspire and support you in your working office spaces and bringing a little bit of color and ingenuity and warmth into your space. So don't forget about them, use them in your resources. So your host today here, Denise Kimani of Denise Kimani Designs. I began my journey over a decade back here as a native Southern California local in the Orange County territory. And so my background comes from an art history and architectural design background from my undergrad. And in 2016, I launched my own design firm. So I've been servicing many clientele, mainly in Southern California. And I love bringing their unique passions and old world connections to the new world design. So I love merging those two principles and giving families the form and function throughout their home and space, and obviously updating it with modern times, but keeping it, giving it an added beauty and an added value that each home owner desires. So I've done some commercial design as well for TIs and office spaces, and happy to be servicing people throughout my local community here. Without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker, Miss Margo Jones. Oh, wait, yes, okay. She is our again, astute guru who has been around in IIDA as a member for, I forget how many years she had shared with us before, but she has been the president over in Georgia's chapter. and has launched her own coaching practice since 2002. And she assists personnel with identifying the issues of importance and creating meaningful career paths and implementing success strategies for their personal growth. So through her coaching process with M. Jones and Associates, she is able to assess your needs, your strengths, give you goals, objections, and action plans to make your dreams come true, basically, in your career as we grow professionally. So we are delighted to have Margo. She has a history of mentoring young women and men across different industries in design, and she has served on advisory boards and lectured across all range of topics. And she comes from her background of having a fine arts degree from SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. And she holds her visual arts degree of her BA from Georgia State University. So hopefully we might have some Southern Georgian attendees today. And she also has her membership current with the International Coaching ICF Federation. So welcome, Margo. We are delighted to have you today. A little bit from the east to the west, a lot of our members here in LA and San Diego, we do have 4 city centers with 1,000 IIDA members, which covers 44,000 square miles. That's a whole lot of people and a whole lot of mileage. So you can imagine that, I forget what Margo had mentioned earlier. I think her chapter might be a little smaller in population. However, you can be small and mighty. So we are in SoCal trying to divide and conquer, as you can see on the map. So we also have about, it was around 30% or more representation, which is amazing. So just in Southern California alone, we have about 25% student members, 20% professional, and corporately 29%. So this is a great visual that Katie has put together for us just to kind of bring in all that is joining us today. And now with the luxury of Zooming from your own homes or offices, we get to go across from east to west. So after all of these particulars, we have a poll. So as you're listening in today to the seminar, please check out the polls that Elliot has listed, and we can tally up where you're zooming in from. If that's what I needed to say about that, Elliot, I believe that was it. And then also, as you're listening to Miss Margo give her presentation, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. We will do a quick Q&A at the end and get to all the questions that you may have. But Margo has put together a extensive list for us today. So without further ado, I pass it over to Margo to present how to be networked, how to prepare yourself as we're launching into more face-to-face interactions again this year, how to be professional about it, and also what can we do? What is networking and how do we benefit from it? So Margo, I'm thrilled to glean from your expertise and wisdom today about our topic.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with all of you. And yes, the Georgia chapter is smaller, but a few years ago it was noted as a small, large chapter. So that was kind of a big deal. But California, you all are spread out and I know have wonderful city centers. So I commend you for getting involved if you are. And if you aren't yet, I think we will add to some reasons why you should be active in IIDA there. So I know we have a nice range of people on the call today, certainly designers at various levels, and we have some students participating today. The universities are well represented, and we certainly have architects on the call, and we have industry professionals. So I had a long working relationship with people, colleagues, including at Crossville for a very long time. So I was really thrilled to see you all in attendance and the sponsors participating. So First question, very easy, and most of you will know this, but what is networking and how can it benefit you? It's the sharing of information and ideas. If you think about a telecommunications, or even looking at this photograph on the screen, you think about interconnectivity, and that's really what we're talking about. So you already have a network. It may be more family oriented. It may already be work oriented. It could be that you have been an active alum in your university. It could be that you're involved in a community organization or a faith-based group. But the kinds of connectivities that we see are going to vary from individual to individual. And I like to celebrate that. So think, as we're talking, how does this all relate to you and perhaps the connections that you already have? Because you'll find, even if they're personal and family connections, they are interrelated with all of us. And we are largely, to a large extent, who we associate with. So let's lift that up. So principally, since we're exchanging information and ideas with people, then it might be it probably is in an informal setting. At certain points when you're networking, you might be attending an event that is structured with participants, presenters, that type of thing. But most often it would be an informal kind of a setting. And I think that's good. Kind of want to plant that as the goal, because anytime we can break down what otherwise might be stiff or forced, it helps all of us, doesn't it? And I think David's comments in the session last week, which I sat in on, it was all about that. It was about relaxing, smiling, realizing that other people have viewpoints and needs and considerations to take into account. So I think what we want to do is lift each other up and realize that when we do that, and we take some of the focus off of our own self, then we can tend to relax and get more into, well, what's the purpose? Why am I really here? So if you might have an introduction by a common contact, let's say one of your industry reps says, hey, Denise, I think you would really benefit from getting to know Katie. Let me introduce you. Let's imagine that they had never met. Or maybe it's someone that you did go to school with, and they've been out for a few months or a few years, and you get back in touch with them and say, oh, would you introduce me to so-and-so that works with you? I would really be interested in whatever. Okay, now, so here's the point where we would want to be a little bit more subtle. We know that establishing these connections has to do with that information that we talked about. But in reality, it could be something, let's just say self-serving, and that's not bad. But let's say that you are wanting to get an internship, or you're wanting to think about getting introduced to someone for a job, or if you are in sales, to promote your product. Nothing wrong with any of that. But what we want to do is think about first, we're creating a relationship. So in relationships, we are cognizant of other people. We need to be considerate of other people. And we don't just automatically assume that if you introduce me, then I can take it from there. Does that make sense? I hope it will. I think that it will. So if you're wanting to develop a productive and meaningful relationship, which is the idea, and knowing that things will follow, like sales, possibly a job, certainly other sharing of knowledge, let's say, well, how do you develop an effective network so that it wouldn't just look like a random series of connected yarns or wires. But now we're thinking about, all right, this is going to be my unique, meaningful network. What is it going to be? How can I advance it? How can I craft this sometimes invisible, but still very real network. So you can see in the shaking of hands here, effective, what does that mean? What does it mean? So I think you should take a little bit of time and self-assess, and this would be some homework that I would give you to be describing what would the ultimate network for me be? How would it look? Who would be in it? What sorts of things might we do together? What would be examples of potential conflict that we might have? No one always agrees with everything, and that's okay to respect that. First and foremost, because we're here and we're IIDA, it's to join and become active in an organization. So specifically, we would lift up IIDA. Think about your geography. Where are you? Where do you want to be? If you're covering a lot of territory, you want to make some shifts about that. Where might you want to go? If you want to change jobs entirely, move out of a region, what would that entail? Would there be people to network with in those other geographies? Of course, there will be. And IIDA, among others, is a bridge. So you think about the invisible network, well, all of a sudden it's visible. So you not only have the city centers in a state and region, you now have chapters to cross over. Maybe you've always loved the idea of living in a beautiful historic town on the East Coast like Savannah. Well, all of a sudden, you know somebody there, you know me. So I could become part of your network, and on and on and on. Katie has the opportunity, working at an international level, to get to know people outside of the region. So that might be an example of, say, hey, I'm considering going up to Washington State. Who do we know through IIDA that is active up there? So not just who is there, but who is active. I would say, in addition to that, think about the activist aspect. If there's something that the chapter is participating in that you recognize, hey, that is catching my attention, find out about it. For instance, I think Denise is going to talk a little bit later about the DIE, so the diversity, inclusivity, the word just went out of my head, equity. And that's, as you know, that has been raised in a lot of different professions, not just in ours, but thinking about the network again. All right, what groups or people are supporting causes like diversity issue causes? Maybe there are people in your school or your workplace that are already volunteering, taking part in things like that, and you've been busy and haven't really looked into it. Well, here you are in a chapter. In fact, the Northern and Southern California chapters have a joint initiative on that, just that. So you might find yourself, oh gosh, that's a great idea. So in other words, an effective network can help you support causes or just interests that you might have that you might not otherwise sort of have a way in. You could participate in a jury at a university. It doesn't have to be where you went to school, but if you could take just a little bit of time, an hour, 2, 3, 4, and devote, that is also a great skill building for leadership. Possibly public speaking, but definitely that network will benefit you. You might participate in a career day at an elementary school. And wouldn't that be fantastic if more architects and interior designers and industry professionals would literally go down to the levels of education where we can make such a difference? So that might be something else that you would do. So the idea of that effective network, maybe it's not specifically interior design, but it's related. We have a great organization called CREW, C-R-E-W, and that's Commercial Real Estate Women. But it's not all women, but it was begun by women, particularly in hospitality. So if you have a strong interest in working in or already working with hospitality, that's huge. And broadening all the time, then you could become a student member if you're a student, or you could become another associate member of CREW. A plug for school is CREW gives out scholarships, and they could be $500, they could be $5,000 for student work that you might already be doing. Very, very generous based on financial need. It might be along that same lines, that was the NEWH. Another one would be in your own community where you live. Maybe there is a Habitat for Humanity team. I know the design organization does Habitat houses, but there are also the tiny house projects, and they're happening in every region now. And when you go somewhere and interact with people physically, which we are beginning to be able to do now, then you might say that breaks the ice right there. So the effective network could be a hands-on in the field involvement. So I would definitely encourage you with that. It might be faith-based. So if you're active in an organization and you believe, have certain beliefs that you want to expand or renew, there might be an outreach program, whether it's working with homeless or otherwise individuals who could use some help, some encouragement. Maybe you could help someone with a resume because you have done your own resume. So anyway, lots of examples. And that brings us to the actual presenting ourselves. So the idea of having a professional profile comes into play here. I have been very fortunate when I was teaching at SCAD to teach the portfolio class for many, many years. The portfolio and resume, definitely technology has impacted, but really a resume of any type is literally a conveying about you pertinent information, facts, points, involvements, which we've just been talking about. So the idea that you are going to now have a professional profile, I know a lot of you on the call would already have this. And so what we're thinking about is something now that is a visual representation of you. So establishing a professional profile would have a lot of parts. If you are already on LinkedIn, you know what I'm talking about. I would start with the idea that everyone, presumably on this call, should be on LinkedIn. And I guess I wish you could raise your hands or let our polling people also know if you have a profile or not. I think that would be very interesting because the profile needs to serve you well. And that means it isn't static. The LinkedIn profile that you might create now would be perhaps very different 6 months from now, given the staying in that we've all been doing. Maybe you have been advancing some skills along with keeping up with work and family and home life and all those things. Maybe you have learned something that you didn't have on your profile before that you need to think, oh my goodness, I should go in and update that profile. If you don't have a profile yet, I would suggest that you go onto LinkedIn and search within the field. It could be design, it could be real estate, it could be a specialized practice area, and look at individuals, maybe in your own region, but it wouldn't have to be, who are already have a profile that you are impressed with. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a senior person. Could be someone that has just been out of school, for maybe a year or 2 years. So if you're just getting started, or if you're a student, go ahead and see what it is made up of. Of course, we know an effective profile has a summary statement. So read through those and either take what you have and mark it up literally, begin to consider how you now want to be put across, how you want to be perceived, let's say, and look critically. Maybe have a colleague look at what you're coming up with or you already have, and they say, that photo is just not good. Maybe you changed your hair a lot, or maybe you have, something about the photograph that you had previously that was just a little too casual, or maybe it's a little too stiff, a little too formal. So you're not trying to copy anyone, but certainly looking at people that you respect and regard, and you now are networking with or want to network with. There's a lot to be taken into consideration in terms of appearance. And I'm not trying to sound like it one size fits all, because it definitely does not. Also on that profile is going to be your education. If you're a senior person, a very senior person, and you don't want to include the year that you graduated, then you don't have to. But if you are an intermediate, possibly to senior, and definitely a junior or just starting out, dates are important. But I do want to dispel the myth that having consecutive dates with no gaps is a myth. So do not worry. If you graduated from school and you worked in a different arena, put it down. If you worked as a valet in a hotel and you were parking expensive, probably cars, put something on there about the responsibilities that you have. If you have been in home care for someone, there might be a way to include that. So in other words, it doesn't have to be all about interior design or architecture or an industry field. You're also going to want to include experience that does relate to the field. But if you don't have anything right now, then include what you have that helps people understand your skills and abilities. And when you're taking inventory, as I mentioned when we started, I would also do in that self-assessment, jot down or diagram or journal. If you're familiar with what a mind map is or a word map, that can be very, very helpful when you're creating a profile to think about, okay, well, I was here, and then I was here, and at this point I learned X, and then when I moved over here, I expanded my thinking. So you get me. So don't just feel like it has to be this firm, sequential, typewritten everything. Let it be expressive. You don't have to include a lot of honors and achievements, but if there's just a few things that you can remember. If you're a junior person, again, go back to school. If you won an award for your one of your projects or for a thesis, that's terrific to lift that up. If you've been out in the field for a while, maybe you took part in already in the IIDA chapter, something that was received an award from the chapter, or maybe you're taking part in the costume, the IIDA program that happens many years, and you were part of a team and they won an award, or maybe you were involved in historic preservation. So, there are lots of honors and awards that might work. Maybe you are recognized as an achievement or a leader in your community organization, even like junior achievement. That is an honor and award. So think really broadly about that. And maybe consider having a colleague that's really good with photography, or maybe hiring a professional. I know sometimes the chapters will have membership events and they'll do a free headshot for members who participate. So if you haven't done that, you might talk that up. But that's been very successful in the Georgia chapter. But remember that a LinkedIn profile is not, it's not an end. It is a way to continue conveying to others who you are. I want you to encourage yourself to think about building a brand. If it doesn't mean that it happens overnight, but we all do sort of become our own brands. And if you're familiar with authors that have written over the years about brand you or creating a brand, might not be a bad idea to go online, download some things about that, maybe pick up an actual publication about what a brand is, what brand essence is. When you think about requesting connections, as we want to do on LinkedIn, I think just remember that asking for a connection is serious. It's regarded on LinkedIn as something important and meaningful. So if you're going to request through an invitation for a connection, put a little note in there. Ideally, you've already had a potential contact. So let's say that you listened to, let's say Denise was involved in a program and you heard her speaking on something and she mentioned this person on LinkedIn that you think, oh gosh, I'd like to be networked with this person. You might have liberty to ask Denise if she would make an introduction for you. Or you might reach out to the person and say, I heard Denise speak and it really was wonderful. And it sounded like the type of thought that you have in what you're doing. Keep it succinct, though. There's not a lot of space in that request, but that might be something that works for you. So thinking then about a meaningful first impression. Let's say you have your profile, you have it set up. We're still in virtual mode, as you know, and probably will be for a while, at least for part of the time. We never know when these things are going to come back around again. I think we have to learn from history that things like pandemics are not new. They do happen, and sometimes they happen again the next year and even after that. So while we want to be completely physical, or maybe you don't, maybe you love working virtually, and maybe that means you ought to consider working in a way that you can be at least partially virtual, but nevertheless, we're still human and we still crave connections and in-person relationships. So that means we have to think about making a first impression. So it might be that you're considering a bridge between where you have been for the last year, literally, at home or somewhere else in a coffee shop, wherever you have been able to find to have a workplace. And now you're thinking about reaching out, going to an event. I do think that your profile and that visual connection that you will have created or updated is a big part of it. So if you did go through the effort of establishing an appearance, let's say, and it doesn't mean that you go to an event that you have to look just like that. That would be ridiculous. However, you would want to be recognizable. So we're thinking about being comfortable. So let's imagine that you're going to go to a networking event. Let's say the chapter has something coming up, whether on DIE or some other topic that's coming, and you say, I'm going to go. So one thing might be doing some homework ahead of time and finding out or calling, texting, emailing, asking some questions. What is the format of the event? What is going to actually happen there? How long is it going to be at this event? In other words, you need to be comfortable. You need to be relaxed. You need to be dressed in a way that you would be happy. that you would feel is appropriate for whatever it is. Now, if you're going out on Habitat for Humanity or a job site or something like that, then again, know about that. Are you going to be in the field? Do you need to have on work boots? Do you need to have closed-toed shoes? You know, what is required? And do you have an expectation of how long you're going to be in that situation? Especially a networking event, I think you would probably find out it's a lot of standing. And those of you on the call know this, but you are seasoned, you're going anyway, and maybe you know to tell someone who would ask you, wear comfortable shoes. I remember one of the first times that I went to NeoCon, and actually went to NeoCon as a student member of IIDA. It was IBD before, and I was going to go to NeoCon, and I knew that the Merchandise Mart Chicago was a huge building. I didn't realize that for decades it had been the largest square footage building in the country. And I didn't realize that we were going to, of course, be dressed. I knew we would be dressed up, but I didn't imagine that we would be dressed and wearing shoes that would be great, but really hard after 2 hours or 3 hours. Now, if you go to BD or NeoCon or any event that frankly survives from the pandemic, which will be different, you would go and you would see that people are dressed differently. They're certainly wearing shoes that are comfortable, but for you in your area, it may be a little bit different. So try to anticipate and do some homework ahead of time of what is going to happen once you're there. But primarily, I would say it's not all about you. So that sounds harsh, but in reality, it means, okay, it's about somebody else. Do you know, could you imagine that Katie or Denise or Elliot or I could be nervous? Yes, indeed. So that means that whoever you're meeting at an event could very well be, if not nervous about being there or meeting you, they might have had a really rough day. They might have had a work situation that exploded. Elliot shared that he had a very busy morning today. I had a very busy, different kind of a morning today. So the point is, when you are in face-to-face or frankly online, remember, take a moment to ask the other person, it's so nice to meet you. Try to think, instead of having to have a question, where do you work? Or what do you do for a living? Or how long have you lived in San Diego? Or those kinds of things. Relax, take a deep breath. Again, David's comments, if you were on the call last week, smile. Try to be inside of the other person for a moment or 2 or 5 seconds and think, how was your day today? It doesn't have to be, a long conversation, but it can be an icebreaker. And I would say also, if you are aware and you've taken the initiative to find out about why are we there and who are the people that are going to be there, there'll be things to talk about. And if not, then say, gosh, I love that color on you. It sounds very superficial, but it isn't really. We're in a color field. Or if there's anything at all that you can remark on that is complimentary, that's just terrific. So I think the first impression is just the beginning of it. And from there, we can think about actively engaging with your network. We've already laid out a number of organizations, remembering, however, that this is unique to you. This part needs to really be about you. We all have limited time available. People generally have to earn a living. They have to be, if they're in school, they have to meet deadlines and finish schoolwork. If you're repping, you've got territory, you've got expectations, you've got demands. So contemplating, How much time do you have to engage? Well, if you go back to that mind map or that word map or the journaling that I want you to do, you might be thinking, well, who is in this network? You can't do everything all at once. None of us can. So maybe partition your time. Think about, okay, it's almost April. That means that the outdoor events are going to be possibly prime. Find out what's going on and say, okay, that means that I need to devote time to maybe let's say a physical volunteer activity that is coming up. So maybe be selective and just decide, okay, which one of those organizations do I want to focus on in April? And it literally could be, I love David's comments on Wednesday about the 21 days. Wasn't that wonderful? So you might think about 3 weeks or possibly 4 weeks of emphasis. And I love this because that way you could say, you don't even have to tell anybody, but you might say, April is my time to devote to this particular cause. Supporting something, and choose that, and then say, okay, well, here are 3 people I've already met, I found out about, I'm going to begin with them, and reach out or take the event itself and say, okay, the event is in 5 days. I'm not signed up for it yet. I need to sign up for it, get on board, get involved. So you might attend an event, definitely in terms of LinkedIn. You might be noticing something that is coming up, like today, that you want to comment on. You want to add your like. Maybe you want to post something that is supportive of it. Maybe you want to say, I learned a lot in this networking or in this webinar today. And as a result, I'm going to be volunteering with that DIE program. Hope to see you there. Do you see? Of course you do. So maybe start with something for April, and then looking more down the road, you can think about, well, then May, all right? Maybe you're going to have a little bit more time in June. So Denise is just commenting about the Dwell events that are going to be happening in LA. Wow, that's fantastic. They may look a little differently this year, but find out. How much of it is going to be in person? How much of it is virtual? Do you see? So plan a focus, maybe 3 weeks or maybe a month or maybe a week. You know, if you have the ability to juggle and do more things, then that might be the answer for you. Another consideration now is the social media. So a lot of us spend time on social media. Again, when you consider what would social media do to advance or promote my networking ability, it might be a lot different than what might I be doing with social media for another reason. And here we want to have that sort of frank discussion and understanding about the world of social media. If anything, in the last 2-3 years, we learned that there are different times, different seasons for different activities, events, behaviors. We know about that. We've seen some very bad behavior by a lot of people all over the world. However, we've seen a lot of wonderful, beneficial activity by a lot of really important people. Then, and by important, I mean the healthcare workers. I mean the people in our communities that have been, going above and beyond. So at this point, I think it's good for us to take a lesson. What we might have commented on and maybe initiated a post on 6 months ago or a year ago or a year and a half ago might need to be a lot different from what it would be now. And that is possibly because we've learned through others' mistakes. How many times have you seen a post whether it's on Facebook or Twitter, that you could just cringe and you could tell the person that you otherwise thought had it all together, you thought, oh gosh, I bet that person wishes that she or he could take that back. And it's out there. So not to be completely judgmental, but we always learn from our mistakes. We always learn from other people's mistakes. So we want to think about, okay, then that means what is optimal. So if you are on Instagram, for instance, well, it's obviously a visual program. So if it's a visual format, what does that mean for your own use? You know that. I mean, most of you are probably in creative ventures, so you know that if I am on Instagram, it's all about whatever it is. It's going to go across the screen, or it's going to be there. People are going to be commenting on that. So it's clearly going to be something creative, maybe photography, something else having to do design. You know, there's so many avenues within that. But again, we're talking about your network. So we're not just talking about an interest area of yours, but something that you've already had a plan, hopefully, for how do I make a more meaningful, stronger connectivity with my network. If it is Facebook, I've already given a bit of a cautionary tale, but wonderful opportunities for groups, for mutual support, for activist work, as long as you know that a lot of people, including your current employers, maybe your current university people, and definitely your prospective employers, are looking at Facebook posts and they are paying attention. It's a big brother thing. It might be annoying. We might think, oh no, we don't like that, but it is a reality. And I think before too much longer, we're all probably going to be computer chipped anyway. And that frankly might make it easier to go through the airports because they'll know everything else all about us anyway. So think before we tweet, think before you post. And I think really erring on less is more. Probably, if you look even on LinkedIn, you see some people tend to comment and post a lot on all different topics, and that's maybe fine, but it might get to the point where your posts get to be sort of watered down because people skim over them because they think maybe it won't be as meaningful as if it surfaced every so often. So that might be kind of a good thing to consider. Make it meaningful, make it professional, make it upboard, make it positive, lift other people up, make your colleagues shine, and you will shine along with them. So I think I know we're going to have some time for questions. And we already, I believe, have some questions, and Denise has a lot of wonderful announcements too. So we'll, I think, go back to Denise.
All right. That was fantastic, Margo. I can't wait to review these notes. You have a plethora of wisdom and nuggets, especially this mind map. I think Katie and I both did a hands up emoji.
Good.
So thank you. This is just so helpful. And obviously, when I go back and look at my LinkedIn from the start till now, I mean, all been changed. I've added partnerships through reaching out to a student colleague, and then from the professors and directors of the program, link you to other industry partners and vetted architects, designers, builders, all of these people within our industries. And it's just this harmonious unifying across the different disciplines. So I love that. And I love that we have the technology now, but we also are craving that face-to-face human interaction. So thank you so much. I hope we can list your information that those who are participating can reach out directly to you via email, and also look in your LinkedIn profile and make connections that way. You know, a lot of these events, I tend to do that afterwards, and I like or ask directly. I just, you know, pull up my bootstraps, and if we don't have a connection already, just say, hey, this is who I am. I would love to meet with you. How can we network together? And sometimes that's all it takes, because we all are so busy. So if you spend that 2 minutes, like you said, to just divide your time, focus on your to-dos and get it done. And then you start to build, again, your network. And that's the power of networking, right? So I think there was a couple questions from our co-chair here in Orange County, Danielle, had said a few things. I'm trying to pull it up again because I lost my chat box. Oh, shoot. Hold on a moment. I think it is hidden behind something. Where are the Q&As again? Q&As, here it is. Okay. So she asked us, if you are participating in an organization viewed by a potential owner as a benefit, or is it preferred that the organization be industry related? So I think this is both. I think you can be an industry partner and then also have your sister, what am I trying to say? Just if you're in the same industry, then yes. Does that answer the question? I think participating in an organization viewed by the potential partner as a benefit, absolutely. Because, like, for example, when I'm looking to hire individuals, I'm going to look, did they go to the same school that I went to? Are they in the same local community in Southern California that I'm in? Those are types of things, they're connected with another person I might know. So again, it's that webbing and linking together of all these people we're interconnected with. So yes, you kind of want to partner with both, but be selective, focus in, like Margo said, focus in your mind map, your top key 5 things you want to lean into. Do you want to focus on hospitality design? If you're a student as a senior and your portfolio has both residential, commercial, like mine did, I tended to go towards residential because my passion was towards that. So I was linking with Habitat Humanity. I was linking with ASID as the other for a residential focus versus the IIDA national commercial sector. I still was involved with both because those industries come into one another. I've used Crossville. I've used Mohawk and Shaw Floorings. I've used people that go to on the commercial side for things in my residential homes. People want easy maintenance care. They want dwell and well buildings now. We want sustainability here on our coast, right? East Coast to West Coast and across the US. So I think you can definitely partner with those top people that you want to do and have it be a benefit for the employer as well as your own personal benefit of the groups and associations you want to be associated with. So Danielle also asked, do you have any icebreakers? And this might be a Margo answer to unpack when you don't have that mutual connection. So it's almost like a blind date and you may not have any commonalities. So for example, it'd be like me reaching out to possibly somebody not in Southern California, maybe they're in the Midwest and maybe they're in the commercial sector of healthcare. I have no experience in healthcare, but I want to make that connection for some reason. So how would we go about doing that? Do you have any ideas?
Yes, and I think you just about hit it on the head. Why do you want that connection? What is it about it? Frankly, if it were healthcare, it could be something in your own family life that happened. That maybe, if it's a sad situation or something very emotional, rather very emotional, maybe you're not going to be comfortable talking about it. But if it's something else, maybe there's something about health or fitness or wellness that is important to you. So I think an icebreaker might be for you to think about what is meaningful about that particular. So it could be even if you are at an event and there's some focus of that event, well, why did you go there? I think to give yourself credit to know that you really have the answers You know, most people have the answers to what they're wondering about, like an icebreaker. Just give yourself credit and think, okay, well, I'm going there for this reason, and I'm willing to share that. And when you share why you're there, then that will help create a conversation. It will happen for you. But if you're at an IIDA event, the really easy part, the no-brainer, is go up and approach one of the officers or the committee leads and be right there with them in a nice way and say, I hope you would introduce me to so-and-so. And there you have a three-party conversation, and that always breaks the ice.
That's beautiful, because that's like the human connection we need. You talked again in the beginning about relationships, and that's what we do, is we connect each other. So I think that answers it right there, Margo. Thank you for that. Her other question stipulates, how far back would we go in our work history, probably in LinkedIn and in the resumes, for reference and being current? So she gave an example of, if in 15 years, do I list all of that? In other words, where should we focus? Top 5, top 3? What do you recommend?
I think one thought, Denise, is how long were you in different places? Given the changes that have happened in the last decade, certainly in the last 15 years, a number of people have been in a number of work settings, and through no fault of their own, you know, they moved around or they had a geographic change. So I wouldn't be worried. Let's say if a person had 7 work experiences in 15 years, maybe you do drop off, 2 or 3 of those. If there's a lot of repetition, if you were doing some of the same kinds of things or had the same responsibilities, maybe you drop off, 2 of them. However, if you were at the same firm and you got promoted, then that's huge, any kind of a promotion. So if you worked with a firm, I know we have a lot of different firms on the call, but let's say that you worked for my company, M. Jones Associates, and you were there for 5 years. You might actually have 3 entries because you came in as a junior designer, you advanced to an intermediate designer, and then you became a project manager. And so you might want to fill a lot of space, let's say, with one workplace because you were promoted and worked in different ways. Or maybe you did change fields, and it's still pertinent to list what that earlier field was, especially if your career change was something like, let's say you were in nursing and you went back to school and got a degree in design, as a colleague of mine did. She would keep her nursing work on the profile because it contributed to her now healthcare work in design. But 15 years, it must seem like an eternity, but think of the last year, it really isn't. And so I think 15 years, absolutely, I would show all of it. If it's more like 20 years or 25 years, then probably drop off some of that. But employers too, they're looking at depth. They're not looking for someone who is, well, it depends. They're looking for all kinds of things. So, but in your case, again, it's all about your unique situation. So ultimately, you could decide.
And I agree with you. I think you've got a bread and butter that you can work with, and honing in on your top strengths is always key, and what you brought to the team as going from that entry level up to a junior to now a senior position within the firms. Every employer is looking for that growth. And then 2 more quick questions if we have time. From an anonymous attendee, Margo, do you have any recommendations for those who have spent over a decade in a different field and are now embarking into the built environment?
And that would relate to the colleague that I mentioned. She literally was a nurse, and she literally went back to school and got a degree. But if you didn't go back to school, you just changed, well, hallelujah, good for you. But again, I would say include that on your resume. But when you're writing a resume, and you're going to have a future presentation about portfolio. I imagine you're going to be talking about resume. If not, you're welcome to contact me and I'll have an answer for you. But it is so important that people be represented as people. And that means we might be design centric now, but really if on our bench, we worked in whole nother arena, hallelujah, that could set you apart. Also, if you have a foreign language, or you worked in another country, oh my goodness, that's great. Or you went to school in another country for anything, even for one semester, that would be the kind of things to include as well. But definitely, crossover people sometimes are the best employees that people have.
Exactly. If you dig into my work history and my personal current endeavors, I am wanting to bridge into multi-residential housing. And so that's more of a commercial focus, even though my history in the past has been with single home families. So hence I'm more involved with IIDA to kind of keep involved and hear what's coming up for these new high rises. That seems to be a trend. So I'm right there with you, anonymous writer. I think it just goes to conversations and honing in on, again, what your former work history, how that can cross over into the new industry you're bridging into. So, and again, networking, using your mentors, using people you know to make those connections. So lastly, if your social media is a personal one and not professional, is it best practice to not allow professional colleagues to follow you?
I think that perhaps after giving thought to what we talked about today, you will consider social media that is professional. But in the meantime, if you have a personal situation, I think look out for the kinds of issues that I was beginning to allude to. I don't think not allowing someone to follow you, you might refuse them, but if they're looking for information about you, they'll find it anyway. Maybe through your involvements or other kinds of things. So if you're feeling spooked about it, then that might be one thing. But if it's more a matter of you're posting things on your professional outlet that you wouldn't want a professional to see, then I think you should really reel back from that and realize the world of today is they're going to find it anyway. And so I'm not saying they're going to be dishonest and have somebody else follow you, but I do know seriously there are things happening in this world and with people that are posting, and you know what I mean, and they're cruel and negative. And so people are really on edge about being sure when they're getting into relationships, business relationships, that they have a clear understanding of what is important to the person and what their outlooks are. And it's just the way of the world. So, but I would go with the professional profile if at all possible.
Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned that too, Margo, is just using your wisdom and discernment through all of this process, because we are emotional as we get in our own headspace, thinking about things and how you want to present yourself. So there should be a commonality there. I think when you're looking at, if you're designing a website and you get professional headshots and you're kind of, getting yourself out there, I mean, take that extra time to evaluate everything and the people you want to be linked to, right? I'm not going to friend somebody or follow somebody that I don't admire or that I'm not, wanting to partner with, or either projects on a professional level and also on a personal level. So I kind of try to marry the two as well. So hopefully that helps answer your question there. And then lastly, is the one-page resume no longer a must? So can we do a page and a half, 2-page resume?
So this is a really important question. I think having the LinkedIn profile is really advantageous because there's no page length to it. So for one thing, you could certainly have on your LinkedIn profile more information than you would put on a printed, emailed, or even mailed, let's say, resume. However, the expectation still is the one-page resume is necessary. Now, you might, again, when in your topic that you're going to do in your future session, you might be looking at things like font size and spacing. You might be looking at different kinds of wording. There are so many great ways of doing a one-page resume that are not the norm. You don't have to say, and you certainly don't need to use complete sentences. And that cuts out a lot of space when you're just very succinct the way that you're writing. So if you have a career advisor or you have a university or your alumni group that maybe they provide career advisement, somebody you could go back to and get your resume looked at, they would very quickly be able to identify strategies to get the length down and still get on that one page what is necessary. And really, it's just a way to get you to the next point, because we want that interview, that conversation to occur. So the resume isn't a be all and end all, just like the LinkedIn profile isn't. So just go with the one page. It might be that in your cover letter, which I know may be a vanishing art, but it's so important, in the cover letter, you might hit some additional points about yourself that would not have fit on that resume, and that's a great strategy. Can be done in an email also, although having something else that they're going to print out along with the cover letter, in essence, it gives you 2 pages.
Great. I love it. So glad we could do all of this, sharing a wealth of information today. Thank you again so much, Margo Jones. Hopefully we can visit your neck of the woods sometime soon. But wanted to,
so thank you.
Yeah. Quickly, as we're out of time, here is the events up and coming for our SoCal chapter. Do a quick screenshot of this. In a couple weeks, 2 weeks from now, is the session 3 for the purpose-driven portfolio. So adding on to this conversation, that'll be a wealth of knowledge. Please sign up and attend 2 days prior to the event. Also, on April 22nd is the CEU for advocacy, and they're also making terrariums. How about that? Continuing our SPF series, session 4, talking about the artfully crafted resume. So again, building on our building blocks on April 28th. And then the Calibre Design Awards. Please RSVP for those on May 20th as a former honorary candidate from the Calibre Awards back in 2012. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody who attended. Join us on April 14th, if not sooner. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Take care.